Hello, welcome to the Sound of Science, the place where we deconstruct unscientific bogus and silly scams. Let's go get them. Hello, my fellow critical thinkers. Thank you for watching. Today I stumbled upon a video made by the Christian apologist IMBeggar. I hope I pronounce his name properly. As of now, I will refer to him as Beggar. Beggar has a pretty large YouTube following of, at this moment, almost 400,000 subscribers. In his videos, he uses fancy animations to clarify his points. He goes into pretty deep detail, and most of what he says seems to be pretty well phrased. Contrary to most Christian apologists on YouTube, who use the most silly and ridiculous arguments that can be refuted very easily. I hope that Beggar perhaps is someone whose arguments can offer me at least some kind of challenge. In one of his latest videos called "Why Would God Create a World with So Much Evil and Suffering?" Beggar deals with an important aspect of the problem of evil, and I think the problem of evil is one of the stronger refutations against the assumption that a Christian God exists. So, let's dive into this.
We give God a lot of heat for creating a world with so much evil and suffering, and then allowing it all to happen.
Yes, and rightly so. Creating a world with so much suffering and then sitting on your hands, doing nothing to correct your mistakes, while you, as an all-powerful God, have plenty of options to end all the suffering you created yourself. That is a pretty unforgivable thing to do. So yes, if the Christian God were to exist, I think that this would be one of his major flaws.
But I would bet, if you were to create your own little world, you would have made it the exact same way, and you wouldn't want it any other way. Now bear with me here on a little bit of an analogy, and I promise it'll all come together in the end.
Now, that is a very bold statement. If I were a god with the same powers as the Christian God, there are many things that I would do totally different. But okay, this is your main premise. If I, or anyone else, had the same powers as the Christian God, we would have done the exact same thing that he did. That is your claim, and that is what you want to demonstrate in your video. So basically you think everything is cool, God is perfect, and he did the right thing. I'm very curious what kind of arguments you can produce to support that claim.
As I'm sure you all know by now, AI has gotten so advanced, you can have a full-on conversation with this thing and not even know you're talking to a bot. And I'm sure you also know that all AI has to be pre-programmed with thousands of protocols to prevent it from, say, taking over the world, starting World War III, or enslaving all of humanity. So in other words, all AI is pre-programmed to serve and do no harm, or to do good and avoid evil. Okay, so imagine the greatest AI engineers on the planet all getting together and saying, let's try to create not the perfect intelligence, but intelligence that is good.
Let's try to create intelligence that is good and not evil. You asked us to bear with you for the duration of your analogy, but you're making it very difficult for me to do that. Because if this is your analogy, the best AI engineers of the planet proposing, let's try to make intelligence that is good and not evil, that doesn't look at all like a God creating us. And in the process, you're making such large leaps that you leave many questions unanswered. Like, why did God create a universe in the first place? There was no one to benefit from it but himself. Nobody asked God to create this universe. He was his own beneficiary, so he could only create the universe for himself. Why? And the universe is vast, it's huge. Earth and its population are just a tiny dot in an environment that contains billions upon billions of stars and planets. Why create all of that when you seem to be occupied with just one tiny grain of sand in the entire desert? But okay, let's assume we put aside those objections and accept that there is a God who for some reason created this vast universe, decides to focus on this one speck of dust called Earth, and now goes for the next step, creating mankind. And you compare this to 3 engineers who think, let's try to create intelligence that is good and not evil. Again, we bump into a massive problem here. As far as I understand the ideas of Christianity, there is no scenario in which the Christian God would ever try to do something, because the Christian God supposedly is all-powerful and all-knowing. At least, that is what about every Christian I ever met tells me. So their God, were he to exist, would never try to make intelligence that is good and not evil. He would just do it because he can. He is God. So, comparing this to 3 engineers to whom creating good intelligence is some sort of a challenge, and they are unsure how this will unfold, and therefore they're going to try, is a totally flawed comparison from the very start. But let's continue anyway and assume for the duration of this video that I'm one of your humble creations. I am one of those billion little intelligent creatures so that I can judge your creation process from the inside. Now, let's continue.
So they thought, let's create a simulated world that acts and behaves just like our own and populate it with millions of these bots who look like us, act like us, and have to live, work, and survive together, just like we do. Now, in this first world, every single bot was pre-programmed to do good and avoid evil.
Wait, in this first world? So you already imply that there are going to be multiple versions of your world. Again, how is that possible? If these engineers are supposed to be a comparison to the God character, they already know the outcome of the world they create. So multiple versions are not needed.
So in other words, every single bot was incapable of making any wrong choices, and only able to make right ones.
No, stop. This is where you totally change the words. Your mission was to make a world with a population that cannot make evil choices, not a population that cannot make wrong choices. Wrong choices don't have to be evil. That's nonsense. If I choose to become an accountant and it turns out that I totally do not feel any fulfillment in that job and it makes me very stressed and unhappy, then that was a wrong choice, but it's not an evil choice. Just stick to your original wording, because if you don't, at best you'd look confused, and at worst it looks like you're trying to trick us.
Now, what do you think we would observe in this first world? Well, it was the perfect world. They advanced incredibly fast and learned how to provide for themselves and for each other, and not one bot was in need. There were no wars, no poverty, no oppression, and no evil, and no suffering.
Wait, no poverty, no suffering? That, of course, is total nonsense, and I think you know that. All you did, as you stated clearly in the beginning of your video, was creating a world in which people cannot make evil choices. So that means that for some reason you still choose to create child cancer, earthquakes, Alzheimer's disease, tsunamis, etc. You yourself said you would create a world that acts just like our own world, remember?
So they thought, let's create a simulated world that acts and behaves just like our own.
So in your simulated world, we still would have huge suffering. So don't flatter yourself too much. The only thing you eliminated is the suffering that is caused by people making evil choices. And being one of your humble little intelligent creations, I am prepared to settle for that, because the real God didn't even bother to do that. You actually did a better job than the God you're trying to defend. So this is where you should stop. Mission accomplished. For some reason, you wanted to create a vast universe with billions of stars. For some reason, you had to do all of that just in order to focus on this tiny speck of dust we call Earth. And then for some reason, you wanted to create billions of people. Well, there was no one who had any need for that. But at least you had the decency to put those billions of people in a world where no one makes evil choices. and that takes away at least a significant part of the suffering that was created by the real God. So this is where we should stop. This is much closer to what we should have had in the first place, which of course makes the actual God look like an incompetent and evil idiot. But I don't care about that if it means that billions of people can now lead a life with less suffering.
The world was all very clean, shiny, peaceful, prosperous, well-ordered, super advanced, and boring.
Excuse me, what? Again, what? Boring? How so? And how is that a problem compared to all the evil that we've just prevented? The world you've just created is not boring at all. It's a great world. People can go to theaters and museums. People can read books and watch movies. People can find love, have a wonderful family life, and have great friends. People can travel and explore the world. People can have exciting jobs and find fulfillment in helping out others who have had misfortune in their lives. People can express themselves freely. People can share ideas. People can work towards a better life for all of us. And all of that without the risk of being victim to war and crime, because you ruled out evil choices. So nobody is complaining. Everyone, all of us, billions of people, would prefer a world like that over the world we got now. It's not boring. And even if you as a creator personally think that the world you created is boring, we don't think it's relevant. Just leave it as it is. You're doing this for us and not for you, don't you?
They noticed all the bots more or less acted the same and fell into very predictable patterns, like a fine-tuned machine.
Who cares? You are the engineers, the creators, the gods. And you might recognize these predictable patterns, but we, the people you're supposed to care about, we don't recognize these predictable patterns, and we don't care about that. All we see is a world where we can make a million choices, and nobody has any desire to make any evil choices, which is great. Just leave us alone now.
So yeah, they created a perfect world, but those in it were not. Because is it really good if you're only doing what you were programmed to do?
But if that programming allows us to make a million choices that all lead to good stuff, then we don't experience any relevant limitation in the choices we can make. The only thing missing from our menu is choosing to do evil stuff. How is that a problem? For whom? And presenting your statement with a marching army of a million of the same simps is a totally inaccurate representation of the population you created. We are all different. We all have different desires, talents, and ambitions. We all choose different paths in life. Suggesting that we're all mindless bots who all do the same thing is a grave misrepresentation of your own creation and pretty disrespectful towards us. This is where you totally start to derail. And I've got a feeling that this is where you're going to do the exact same damage that your supposed God has done.
The engineers thought, let's do something crazy here. Let's rerun the same simulation, but this time, let's only write the protocols into their memories, so they know what's right or wrong, but give them the choice to follow them or not, essentially giving them freedom.
No, that's nonsense. We already had freedom. We could choose what to eat, what to drink, who to love, where to travel, what to think, what to read, where to live. We had 99% of all freedom that one could imagine. The only aspect of freedom we did not have was the freedom to make evil choices, and we didn't care about that. Unless you made another mistake and you programmed us to have the desire to make evil choices. But I can't imagine the best engineers in the world being that stupid. You could have easily chosen to give us the desire not to make evil choices. And then not having the option to make evil choices is no problem for anyone. You see, everyone already has a lack of desire to make many choices. We can all live with that easily. If there is stuff I don't desire, I don't care if I can or can't do it. I have no desire to eat dust from Mars, so the fact that you put me in a world where I can't do that is no problem for me. So if you program your creations to not have a desire to do evil stuff, then nobody wants to have the freedom to do evil stuff. You're now fixing a problem that does not exist, just like your God did. And predictably, this will lead to the same disasters.
What do you think we would observe in this world? Well, as I'm sure you can imagine.
What do I think you observed in that world? Well, of course, if you now allow people to do evil things, and if you also give them the desire to do evil things, then of course you got yourself a recipe for disaster. If you were a real God, you would know this in advance and not even ask me this question. And even if you have half a brain, you know this in advance. So you should stop this silly experiment right away and go back to your first version of the world. The only thing that supposedly was wrong with the first version of this world is that you, as a creator, thought it was boring. And that is not a relevant problem. You've got a million options to escape from boring stuff. There is no need to unleash a barrage of evil on a billion people just because you, as a creator, are bored. That is both selfish and sadistic. Just let these poor people live in peace.
It didn't take long for the first bot to break protocol. And from there, all hell broke loose. This bot took advantage of that bot, these bots oppressed those bots rose up against these bots.
You see, as even a child could predict, you turned the lives of millions of people into a nightmare. And you know it. So, correct your mistake. Go back to a world where people cannot make evil choices and don't have the desire to make evil choices.
The great historical pendulum between the master-slave, the have-nots, began. Which of course led to every form of war, poverty, slavery, hatred, hedonism, and the most unspeakable evils that even the engineers could never have imagined.
But this is one of the core problems of your comparison. Your God does not have this excuse. He's all-knowing. He knew in advance that this unspeakable evil would take place. Yet he decided that he wanted that unspeakable evil to happen anyway. That's the core of this problem. Why does your God allow for unspeakable evil to happen? Well, that is totally unnecessary and easy to prevent for an all-knowing and all-powerful God. We are well into your video now, and you still didn't give any credible explanation for that problem. It's worse. More and more your scenario for this world simulation doesn't make any sense. Nice graphics, but the logic is ridiculous.
And amidst all this newfound squalor, chaos, and confusion, they noticed something else. Cracks emerged in the actual system. Bugs, breakdowns, glitches in the code, system-wide viruses that wiped out generations. Or in other words, what we would call disease.
They noticed disease? Again, it looks like one of the objectives of your comparison is to suggest that it's not your God's mistake that horrible things like disease exist, because the engineers who you use for this comparison didn't see all of this coming. But your supposed God does not have this excuse. He didn't notice disease. He knew, even before he decided to create the universe, that millions of children would die a horrible death because of the diseases that he created himself. So this engineer comparison kind of looks like a cowardly attempt to let God get away with the horrible mismanagement of his creation.
Interwoven between all the spikes of evil and suffering, they saw spikes of goodness, real chosen goodness, sometimes even hero status greatness.
Yes, of course, because if gods screw up their creation and don't fix their mistakes, then people step in and they do it for them, which clearly demonstrates that people are much more good, ethical, and courageous than gods are.
So despite all the evil and suffering, some of the bots still chose to be good. And that's what the engineers set out to design.
Yeah, high five, mission accomplished. We created a world with war, crime and disease, and millions of people suffer from it. Hooray! And since we, the almighty creators, just let our creations perish and suffer, some of them have given up on us altogether and start to clean up. at least some of the mess we made, but most of them still live in poverty, or get horrible diseases, or fall victim to war and crime, and that was our brilliant plan all along. So let's high five on that. What a bunch of totally incompetent idiots.
Blossoming out of the struggle, they saw something that was completely absent from the first world. Identity. Individuality, personality, character emerged, leading to expressions of art and culture.
Excuse me? Culture emerged? Personality emerged? Identity emerged? Now I totally and completely lost all trust in either your sanity or sincerity. Up to now, there was no culture, no identity, no art, no literature, no personality, only because in the first version of your world, people didn't have the option to do evil things. You are either an idiot or a charlatan, no matter how fancy your graphics are, no matter how many people in your comment section praise you for your powerful explanation. This is utter nonsense, and I think you know it. You yourself said that the first version of your world would be exactly like the world we know, but then only without the option to make evil choices. How did that prevent 1 billion people to write books and make movies? How did that prevent 1 billion people to design fashion and architecture? How did that prevent 1 billion people to make paintings and write poems? How did that prevent 1 billion people to develop their own personality and have their own identity? It's total nonsense, and it's a disgrace that you use rubbish like that to find excuses for the horrible evil and suffering that your supposed God keeps allowing for thousands of years now. Well, predictably, your video continues to build more nonsense upon the nonsense you've already presented, but I'm not going to waste more time on that. I guess I will continue my search for a Christian who can present a case for the existence of their God that actually does make sense. But after making 100 videos demonstrating the nonsense of Christian apologists, I won't set my hopes too high. Hey, you there, if you're still here and you thought my video was worth your time, then perhaps subscribe to my channel. And if you don't, I will not punish you. I will not unleash diseases and earthquakes and wars upon you, because I'm much nicer than the Christian God. You can safely subscribe or not subscribe to my channel. It's your choice without me forcing you into any decision by threatening you with eternal torture. And that, my friends, is real freedom. We don't need gods for that. The absence of gods is our best guarantee for freedom. Thank you for watching.